A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
We are watching, and we are taking names.
Governor of Illinois J.B. Pritzker finally said something that I need to hear more Democratic leaders say. So in this video, I'm going to get to that clip as well as a couple of other Democrats that right now I think are saying the right things and doing the right things as a model going forward for Democratic Party as a whole to combat what the hell is going on here with Donald Trump and just the insanity of it all. So we're talking about invading cities. Donald Trump using the military against American citizens, locking up and deporting innocent people to meet some arbitrary quotas, as well as continuing to fund and supply the genocidal state of Israel with weapons. Meanwhile, their citizens get health care while Americans are facing rising costs and no public health care. So let me start with this story that hit yesterday. And look, every day there's something new, right? It's impossible to keep track of it all. I'm having a hard time myself even absorbing the news, let alone being able to communicate it. But this is worth noting because of the response that J.B. Pritzker has. Trump signs executive order establishing specialized National Guard units to address crime in cities, which I hate this headline because it frames it as if there is an issue with crime in cities when there simply is not. Homicides in major cities have continued to drop since the pandemic. So we're looking at Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, San Antonio. All major cities have seen drops in homicides. So as New York Times writes here, in fact, the new analysis suggests that the broad crime surge that took place during the pandemic has largely reversed itself. Of 13 categories of crimes that the council tracks, only one, car theft, remains higher than in 2019, the year before the pandemic. And larger cities are seeing larger drops. So overall, the council found that homicide rates fell 17% in the first half of the year in 30 cities it tracked in that category. But some of the largest cities, ones with historically high murder rates, posted much larger drops, according to the study. So Chicago's rate fell 33%. Compared with the first 6 months of last year. St. Louis fell 22% in the same period, and Baltimore is down 24%. But that's not going to stop dipshit here from spewing his garbage. Check this out.
As you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense and I'm a smart person.
Donald Trump quote, "A lot of people are saying that we would like a dictator." That hasn't even really made headlines. Anyone else saying that, be it Democrat, be it Republican, that's it. That they'd be finished. It's worth, look, I know this is obvious, right? But it's worth reminding ourselves how unique this man is in his ability to spew incredible amounts of trash, and not just in terms of lies, but just the insane shit he says that does not hurt him in any way. I'm telling you this to remind you, once this era is over, once this man is gone, no one else gets away with this. No other, of course, no Democrat, but no other Republican. J.D. Vance isn't getting away with this. So look, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I know it's not just him, it's the people around him. But that's why it's incredibly important to have the J.B. Pritzker approach of not forgetting what these people are doing right now, going into the future. This is not, this should not be an Obama situation where, we're turning the page and forgetting the fact that, Bush and Cheney tortured people. No, let's move on. No, there's no moving on. You cannot move on from this era without locking these people up. So before I get to the Pritzker clip, it's worth noting this. Common Dreams headline here. New Trump order amongst, quote, scariest things I've seen in U.S. politics. Civil rights attorney says the new order, he says, would essentially allow random fascist vigilantes to sign up to be a brown shirt for Trump's militarized occupation forces. So on that point, Monday's order calls for the creation of an online portal for Americans with law enforcement or other relevant backgrounds and experience. Agency heads then shall each deputize the members of this unit to enforce federal law. Alec Karakatsanis, the executive director of the Civil Rights Corps, described in a post on X as, quote, an online portal to permit random fascist vigilantes to join soldiers, adding that it was one of the scariest things I've seen in U.S. politics in my adult life. And an internal memo has referred to this as a quick reaction force, which is worth mentioning here, as the Oath Keepers also notably use the same term, quick reaction force, to refer to its efforts to transfer weapons across state lines to have them ready in D.C. to help with efforts to overturn Trump's election loss on January 6th. This gets to how the hell do we combat this? Well, I think it's important to understand people need to be motivated and behind a movement to ensure that politicians stay honest here. But in terms of what J.B. Pritzker is saying, if he can follow through, or whoever's in power can follow through with this, this has to be the approach.
The state of Illinois is ready to stand against this military deployment with every peaceful tool we have. We will see the Trump administration in court. We will use every lever at our disposal to protect the people of Illinois and their rights. Finally, to the Trump administration officials who are complicit in this scheme, to the public servants who have forsaken their oath to the Constitution to serve the petty whims of an arrogant little man, to any federal official who would come to Chicago and try to incite my people into violence as a pretext for something darker and more dangerous, we are watching and we are taking names. This country has survived darker periods than the one that we're going through right now, and eventually the pendulum will swing back, maybe even next year. Donald Trump has already shown himself to have little regard for the many acolytes that he has encouraged to commit crimes on his behalf. You can delay justice for a time, but history shows you cannot prevent it from finding you eventually. If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law. As Dr. King once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Humbly, I would add, it doesn't bend on its own. History tells us we often have to apply force needed to make sure that the arc gets where it needs to go.
That's it. Now, of course, the caveat here being he has to actually follow through, or whoever attains power has to actually follow through. But, quote, we are watching and we are taking names. And this quote here, if you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law. Now, the only thing I would change here is if you hurt my people, unless he's talking about all Americans and not just, those living in Illinois, because they're hurting people right now. So regardless of what happens in Chicago, what happens in Illinois, there has to be consequences under the constitutional rule of law for what right now is being carried out in other cities all across the U.S. So this has to be the approach. I like the fact that he also mentioned there at the end that we have to apply force needed to make it happen. It's not going to happen on its own, meaning that you actually have to take action. And it would also help if there's, of course, public pressure to take that action. But political leaders need to recognize what Trump and the administration is doing, and they need to understand their place in this and what they can do with their power. So worth mentioning, since I'm going to fold into the next couple of Democrats I want to mention here. Pritzker also announced a first of its kind legal hotline for LGBTQ plus Illinoisans. So this is a line that helps both for accessing healthcare and as well as legal advice. The best way to judge a political leader, I think, is by how they treat the most marginalized in society. And right now, I think it's fair to argue that trans people are the most marginalized group in society, the way that their healthcare is being taken away, the way that they essentially have to escape to safe states to get the healthcare and protections that they need. And this gets to Tim Walz here. So Tim Walz, another Democrat that I think has shown leadership during this time. Here's a recent speech that he gave.
And I always get in trouble for it, and I'll continue to say it. I don't think we do any favors when we don't name it. These are fascist policies meant to take away our. That is what they are. And I will have to tell you, I saw a statistic came out today as Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing that. You can do both. You can do both.
So while some in the Democratic Party are claiming that we shouldn't talk about trans people because it's going to hurt us, I think is a ridiculous approach, especially when Republicans have no interest in voting for Democrats anyways. Tim Walz taking the approach that, no, we need to protect people that need protecting. We need to discuss human rights and the importance of it. And he's not shied away from it, both in speaking about it, but also in how his state approaches trans rights. So the imprint here with their headline, Minnesota braces to protect its trans youth amid Trump attacks. So they go on to write, the Trump administration falsely equated gender-affirming care endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association with, quote, chemical and surgical mutilation, end quote, that amounts to child abuse, which is, of course, absolutely absurd. You know, these clowns, these conservatives claim, oh, we need to be real about the facts about trans people. Meanwhile, they ignore the actual experts, the actual facts, and trans people themselves. Now, in terms of Minnesota, so in early 2023, Governor Tim Walz declared his state a refuge for trans youth seeking gender-affirming healthcare. Minnesota state law protects transgender people, their relatives, and physicians from legal repercussions for participating in such medical care and prohibits state agencies from cooperating with other states where gender-affirming care for minors is outlawed or considered child abuse. So Minnesota really has been a leading state in this. And this gets us to the last Democrat that I want to mention here. And that is Graham Plattner, who is not yet a Democratic politician, but he is challenging Susan Collins in Maine for her Senate seat. And this is somebody who I think is taking the right approach in not being afraid to call out Democratic leadership and their failure. So here he is in a recent interview on CNN.
If you win next year, your first vote would be on choosing the next Democratic leader. That would be Chuck Schumer. Would you vote for him to be the next Democratic leader?
No. At this point, we need leaders that have vision and, frankly, the ability to fight. The things that I've seen recently don't show me a Democratic leadership that has that. And while I don't really have any answers on that front right now of who it would be, I do know that it certainly wouldn't be those who've been in charge.
Now, obviously, answering this question a little more honestly is easier for somebody who is not currently in the Senate. But if he wins the primary and goes on to be the candidate, it would help him politically, or maybe not. I'm contradicting myself here. Maybe it wouldn't help him politically to have the support of the Democratic Senate, considering how unpopular they are. But it goes without saying, this is a position that a lot of Democrats are afraid to take, criticizing leadership publicly. And this has to be the approach. It's not even just the correct thing to do, considering how terrible of a job both Hakeem Jeffries in the House and also Chuck Schumer in the Senate are doing. But it's the correct approach in terms of the politics of it. People are not happy with the Democratic Party right now, at least the leadership of the party. So to continue to prop up a failing leadership would just, it wouldn't benefit anybody. But worth noting here in that American Prospect piece on Graham Plattner, which is a great piece, by the way, they say here, Plattner recounted his own experience as a young contrarian man with conservative leanings who rebelled against his parents' liberal politics. According to Plattner, his time in Iraq and Afghanistan fundamentally changed his outlook, and he began seeing wealthy elites like defense contractors as the true enemy. Now, that's the good kind of Democrat. On the other side, you have people like Richie Torres, invested in weapons makers as he backed billions in arms for Israel. This is a Democratic congressman who is as conservative as they come. All the while, Torres loudly opposed a ceasefire, joined Republicans to override Biden's brief pause on 2,000-pound bombs, and voted to sanction the ICC after it issued arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. This is a New York State congressman. I have to imagine there's going to be a primary challenge, right? You can't have people like this in deep blue districts, part of Congress. It doesn't make any sense. And I think going forward, people are going to be looking for proper, true leaders, like what Pritzker is talking about, what Tim Walz is talking about, what Graham Plattner is talking about. Being willing to call out Democratic Party leadership where they are failing, being willing to fight for the marginalized and do it with actual policy, and of course, fight Donald Trump with real teeth. Having that approach, I think, is at least part of the way forward.